The teaching today is based on a teaching given by Luang Por about the mindfulness of breathing. What's the correct way to practice mindfulness of breathing? There are many different schools and all of them have their different methods. First of all, if we want to understand how to do it correctly, we need to know that any concentration that comes from just concentrating on the breath is not right concentration. And why is that? It's because it has nothing to do with wisdom. The reason that it has nothing to do with wisdom and can never lead to wisdom is that you simply follow the breath inside the nostril or inside the body. Doesn't matter what kind of method you have, you're going to be looking at the sensation of breathing in the body. Maybe you're watching the breath rising and falling in the belly, or you're looking at a specific point in the nostril, or you're following the breath throughout the whole body, or something like that. But you're always watching the breath as a sensation on the body. What does this have to do with knowledge or insight? The air is an outside object, just like the wind from the outside touching the nose. There is no difference with the contact of the air in the nostril or any other bodily sensation. So, although you might indeed become calm, it is the calm of wrong concentration. The fact of being able to achieve a calm or a feeling of happiness or even higher states of mind, that doesn't mean that the practice is right. It's possible, even through wrong concentration, to practice jhana and achieve immaterial states of consciousness, such as the jhana from the teachers of Prince Siddhartha, Alara and Uddaka. This kind of concentration led up even to the formless realms, which we hardly hear about today. Yet, Prince Siddhartha had abandoned this. He taught us to develop mindfulness instead, and many people misinterpret the mindfulness he taught. So how to practice mindfulness of breathing correctly? We have to focus on the intention of breathing that is from the mind. This is all about wisdom, because the breath originates from the mind. Awareness of the breath at the moment when the consciousness at the nose arises, when you realize that the breath is touching the nose, that's not the right way. It's body consciousness, having nothing to do with development of the mind. The development of the mind is not done through the awareness of the body or the eye, ear, nose or tongue. It's only the awareness of the mind. Through the awareness of the mind that we develop the mind. So we have to realize that the origin of the breath is from the mind, not from the consciousness of the nose. Now this fact is not something that we are normally aware of. It's only right mindfulness that knows and sees it arise within the mind. When we know with mindfulness within our heart, we will be aware that the breathing originates at the same place at the same time. It comes from the heart. Breathing does not originate from the nose or the body, it is purely from the mind. They call it the Citta Sankhara. It means an action that is formed by the mind. The mind goes on with breathing, it's the mind that breathes, the mind that pulls the breath in and out, or to be more precise, it gives the order to the body of moving to pull the breath in and out. But we don't know that, we don't see it normally. So we have to bring attention to the mind and go on with breathing. The mind forms the intention of inhaling and the intention of exhaling. And it's this that we have to watch. If we're not mindful enough, if our mind is not clear enough, we can't achieve it. And if we just throw it away, we will never find the wisdom that is to be found right there. The right mindfulness is not the normal automatic awareness that everybody already has. This is something very important to understand. We have to work to become aware of our mind, to be able to see the intention of breathing in the mind. And it's here that we have to pay attention. Know and breathe. Be aware of the intention of breathing in the mind. And since it's difficult to bring our attention to know in this way, it's not something that we do instinctively, we might not realize it immediately. We can also make the mistake of thinking that we ourselves are giving the intention to breathe. We try to control the breath by force, and this is not correct. We need to awaken the mindfulness that sees how the mind breathes. Mindfulness, it just knows. It doesn't do the action of breathing or any other action. Although it is born from the mind within the mind, and it knows the mind, it is not one and the same thing. So an example to understand this, an analogy, is that it's like you have a computer, we have the hardware, we have the software. This is like the body and mind. The body, physical body, is like the hardware of the computer, like the box. With just the hardware, it's useless as a computer if it doesn't have software. The software is like Windows 10 or your version of Mac or whatever operating system that you have and whatever programs you use to run it. This is like the mind. And within this, we can build an antivirus. The antivirus is not the same thing as the software, but its job will be to survey, watch and protect the software to see if there is something harmful that is going to enter. This is like the job of mindfulness. It simply knows the software. So usually if people want to pay attention to breathing, they follow the breath. And you know about breathing after the mind has already given the order to the body to breathe. You're already breathing so that the air touches some part of the body, and only then you have awareness of it. So whether you're watching the stomach rising and falling, or the breath in the nostril, or in the throat, or wherever you're watching it in the body, it's going to be already after the action of breathing is done. Then it means you're not really mindful. To practice rightly, you have to know clearly that there is awareness before breathing. You have to know that you are going to inhale before you actually do. That is mindfulness. If we merely follow the breath, if we only have body consciousness, we don't know anything about the mind. The action of inhaling is already finished. The air is already gone inside. So that's why if the breath comes first and then awareness right after, there's no real mindfulness yet. It's normal mind, normal awareness, and we can't reach any wisdom that way. It's the same with position, posture, and body movements. We have to know to be mindful that we're going to sit down before sitting. We have to be mindful right at the moment of the action of sitting. Know that the mind is giving the order to the body to sit. It's not correct to know after you have already sat down. Similarly, it's not correct to know that you're standing only after you already stood. So we have to know first and then stand. Know first and then walk. Know first and then move, whatever movement we want to do. So this is not something to do only once a day. It has to be, we have to develop it to have it in all our movements, all our positions. Even, for example, just going to sleep normally without being mindful is already sure to be clouded by unawareness, tanha, craving. Our mind will not be pure at that moment. Normally, people will not even realize their own position when they lay down, or you might just know afterwards that you're lying down. But we have to know first and then lie down, be mindful, and then go to sleep. So of course, this is much more difficult than the practice of mindfulness that we're usually taught. The mindfulness of just following the breath or just being aware of knowing the breath as we already know it normally. Because this is about wisdom, which is difficult, while consciousness at the body is an easy matter. The kind of knowledge of knowing that can follow the breath or become aware afterwards when one is lying down, that's ordinary knowledge. We don't need to learn how to know this. Everybody already knows it. Everybody's already can be aware of it automatically. Everybody's mind knows how to breathe without needing to be taught. Breathing occurs naturally without needing any special mindfulness, and that's why all animals breathe without mindfulness, without having to know about breathing. The cow, the buffalo, they're all able to know in the ordinary way of knowing, which is of no benefit, no wisdom. To follow the breath is the easiest thing. Any child can do it. I remember being taught to meditate on the breath when I was maybe 5 or 6 years old. Anyone can do it. So if you like something comfortable and easy, go for wrong concentration. But we can't use this ordinary awareness, which everyone has already, to remove the deep ignorance in our minds that keeps us in suffering. If your aim is to remove ignorance, then we need to learn the way to know with wisdom. And how can we remove our ignorance when we don't even know how to know? When we say knowing here, we're referring to knowledge of Dhamma. We're referring to specifically knowledge, insight, discernment in regard to mindfulness of the body. It's not the ordinary way to know things. It's all about wisdom. And for this, we need to create the mindfulness to know our own mind. And in regard to mindfulness of breathing, that means knowing the mind as it forms the action of inhaling. Another way to see why the ordinary way of just watching the sensation of breathing will never lead to any wisdom is because any practice that we do, if we want to practice the Buddha's teaching, the practice has to be done directly to remove kilesa. It has to be directly done to remove craving, attachments, selfishness, wrong views. It has to be done for the sake of removing greed and aversion, directly removing these things. So if we are aware that we're sitting only when we're already seated, then it's very likely that we've already sat down with desire, with dislike, and with ignorance in our minds, without knowing. For example, it's very often the attachment to bodily comfort that will seek automatically for a place to sit, looking for the most comfortable chair. But if we're mindful before we sit, we will have the self-discipline, we'll be able to have the self-discipline as to whether we should sit or not, where we should sit. Because there can be no kilesa in our minds at that point. When we are mindful correctly, there's no space for greed or aversion to exist within the mind at the same time. So in the same way, mindfulness of breathing is also purely done. It has to be done to remove these things, to remove our kilesa. If we're mindful in the right way, we will have no craving, wrong view, or attachment during the time that we are breathing, that we are mindful of breathing. And we should be very clear at the same time that the Satipatthana meditation, the practice of mindfulness that the Buddha taught, is all about removing impurities, unwholesomeness, kilesa within us while living, knowing right at the moment that we do things. It's not only about sitting in one place for a fixed period of time. Whatever action we do, whatever position we take, sitting, standing, walking, breathing, talking, all must be done to remove greed, aversion, ignorance, to remove moha dosa lopa. All is done to remove craving, attachment, and wrong view. We work in this way, we meditate in this way for the sake of not an ordinary kind of happiness, but the particular contentment that comes from having no more unwholesomeness within us, removing kilesa from our bodily actions, our speech, and our mind. And the practice that we do, therefore, must directly work to remove them, and if not, it's all just wrong concentration. But when we practice wrong concentration, it will end up being done for the sake of our craving and our greed. Even if our aim in the beginning is to follow the Buddha's teaching, our intention might be good. We try to find the right way of practicing mindfulness, but because we don't know, because we are not born with the right view, we're all born with wrong view, we don't find it, and we end up going via our own desires and attachments. We also like to keep the wrong view because it's easier and it's more enjoyable. It's easy to accept. But the right view is not easy for the mind to accept. The mind full of kilesa doesn't like to get rid of these kilesa. It wants to follow them, wants to keep them. So to explain a bit more what I mean by that, we have the stickiness to pleasant feelings, the attachment to any kind of pleasant feeling. That's an attachment to feelings, the happiness of doing something. If we enjoy the calm feeling of concentrating on the sensation of breathing, especially if we're practicing to have this calm, agreeable feeling, we're obviously wrong. We already have this stickiness, this craving, and this wrong view altogether. And we cannot use craving, attachment, greediness, or wrong view to create peace. That's why the feeling of calm or feeling of peace that comes from just concentrating on the breath can never be true peace according to the Buddha's teaching. Peace comes from getting rid of kilesa only, being free of them. Only then is it right. The kind of practice of any form of normal concentration will all end up being built on craving and attachment, and it doesn't have anything to do with getting rid of kilesa. When someone has some desire to sit, searches for happiness in sitting, whether in meditation or not, he's already having craving and attachment. He's already having those at the moment that he sits, even at the moment that he breathes. And having these, we think that it's the right way since we already feel happy. We already just feel happy in breathing. Oh, nothing more to do. I must be doing it right. But Dhamma is not that. It's not about finding happiness from pleasant feelings. It's opposite. The meaning and the aim of practicing Dhamma is that all these things should be destroyed. So that pretty much concludes Luang Por's explanation about the mindfulness of breathing. But there is also a postscript, some more explanation, which I think is very useful and important to give, about the harmfulness of wrong views and the reason why it's difficult to find the right way of knowing because of wrong views. Wrong views are basically anything that runs counter to the truth of things. Examples are believing that we have a permanent self. This is one of the main wrong views that we have to work to get rid of. Believing that actions have no results and that there are no consequences of anything we do. Or thinking that by saying prayers we purify ourselves, or that we can just have all of our wrong actions forgiven and never have to pay for anything. All of these are wrong views. Superstitions are wrong views. Rites and rituals are forms of wrong views. And according to the Buddhist teaching, basically our whole society is built on wrong view, including Buddhist societies. And this is what we're born with. We're not born automatically knowing the truth of things. So this is why the truth is difficult to see. We always tend to go with what we already believe, what we already know, what is already comfortable for us to do and accept. For example, while concentration is an easy matter, wisdom is a difficult matter. And people always choose the easy way out, but you won't be able to achieve anything that way, least of all wisdom. And the wisdom from right view is very difficult to find, precisely because it's hidden everywhere by wrong view, by not knowing. However, if we let go of the wrong view, everything will become easy. It's the wrong view that blinds us and makes all things difficult. Whatever we do will be difficult, and even anything, walking, sitting, our main postures that we take, whether for meditation or just in our lives, will go wrong. And we can't blame ourselves. We're not pointing the finger at you when it goes wrong, because it's simply always the wrong view that prevents us from doing right things. And it's the wrong view that leads us down wrong paths without us ever realizing it. But as long as we keep choosing the easy way out, we don't let go of the wrong view, we'll never be able to practice correctly, we'll never be able to attain true wisdom, because always the practice continues to go along a path that is not the path to wisdom. And how to know how to develop the mind for the path of wisdom, being mindful of your mind is the only way to know clearly. Any practice of mindfulness, any meditation, anything that we do, it has to start from being mindful of our own mind. Otherwise, we can't be really truly aware of anything. We can't know anything. It's quite difficult to explain this thing, and without having a living teacher who can guide you and correct you, it's practically impossible to do on your own. Although it's possible for us to pay attention correctly to have mindfulness at our own mind, it's a difficult thing to explain to somebody who doesn't know it already. It's hard to make it easy for people to understand. So Luang Por says in his teaching, I don't know if what I said will offend anyone. And if it doesn't, then there must be enough cause for them to consider and not just accuse that it is wrong with no reason, no explanation about it being beneficial or not, wholesome or unwholesome. That which is pure without any taint of unwholesomeness is very difficult to teach.